vehicle that we can get to conference, work in a bipartisan and bicameral manner to get the job done, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the last long-term surface transportation authorization expired on September 30th, 2009. We continue to limp along, patching together our nation's transportation system through short-term extensions that cause uncertainty and create chaos for construction crews and local communities across the country and our state transportation departments. The Committee on Transportation Infrastructure reported the House Republican leadership's misguided 5-year surface transportation bill on February 13th of this year. The Rules Committee approved a rule governing its consideration on the floor on February 15th. That was 9 weeks ago this day. And during that time, the Republican leadership has failed to find the votes among its members to pass that bill. Yet, instead of working across party lines, as we have traditionally done for decades on transportation policy, the extreme right wing of their party continues to hold the process hostage to their ideological tirade that the federal government has no business in supporting a national transportation system. 3 weeks ago, I rose to oppose another extension, the 9th extension, since these critical job-creating transportation programs expired in 2009, because Republicans refused to move the process forward by bringing up the bipartisan Senate-passed bill, but instead merely wanted to kick the can down the road once again. Mr. Chairman, we are running out of road. I opposed the short-term extension because I could not for the life of me figure out what difference the Republican leadership hoped to achieve over the next 12 weeks and that they were unable to achieve over the previous 6 weeks. I failed to understand the perverse notion that if we simply fed their dangerous addiction to serial extensions one more time, the skies would magically part and the Republican leadership would miraculously garner enough votes on their side of the aisle to pass H.R. 7. That was a 5-year bill reported by the T&I Committee, something they had failed to do for months. Last week, we heard that the Republican leadership would again be bringing up a short-term extension as a ticket to conference with the Senate. That's the bill that is before us today. When compared with H.R. 7, which is a fatally flawed bill that would mortgage America's future at subprime rates, a clean extension is a vehicle to keep the ball rolling, provided that the Republican leadership will truly allow us to go to conference with the other body. Unlike H.R. 7, a clean extension does not make short-sighted cuts to surface transportation investments that would destroy jobs and economic growth. These cuts are out. We're talking about funding at current levels. Under the scheme advanced by the majority, public transit revenue would have been shifted to highways. Transit would have been bailed out with a one-time transfer of $40 billion from the general fund, robbing middle-class Americans to pay for the shuffle. Under a clean extension, this that we're considering today, this misguided shell game is gone, fortunately. The majority's proposal fails to close all the existing loopholes in Buy America laws. These gaping loopholes are being exploited by foreign competitors like China, who are stealing American jobs and undermining our ability to create more American jobs and to revive American manufacturing. Under today's bill, locking in these loopholes are out, and these provisions can be revisited in a long-term bill. Under a clean extension, the majority's poison pill to needlessly eliminate Occupational Safety and Health Administration protection for hazmat workers, as was originally in H.R. 7, that thankfully is gone today. The majority's efforts to subsidize private transit companies and mandate the use of private engineering firms on federal aid highway projects is gone in today's bill. Instead of turning back the clock nearly half a century on America's greatness and the incredible work we have done to grow our nation, to build a thriving economy, and to lead the global market, we should be working together to develop a bipartisan bill that can pass both bodies and be signed into law. Now, taking the other side at their word, that they are serious about moving the process forward, and I'm beginning to think that may be a likely scenario. Passage of this extension of current law through the end of the fiscal year will allow us to go to conference with the other body on their bipartisan multi-year bill, which passed with the support of 3/4 of the Senate, 74 votes in that other body. How many pieces of legislation do you get that many votes in the other body on? A long-term bill will provide the certainty that states need to invest and proceed with their plans that have been long on the books. It will provide the certainty that highway and transit contractors desperately need to give them the confidence to hire that one more worker. Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to yield 4 minutes to the chair of the Highway Subcommittee, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Duncan.
Gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding me this time. H.R. 4348 extends the surface transportation programs through September 30th, 2012 at funding levels consistent with the fiscal year 2012 Transportation Appropriations Bill, which we passed in November. Under the current extension, the highway, transit, and highway safety programs are set to expire on June 30th. This legislation will allow these programs to continue through the fiscal year and to provide predictability during the summer construction season. This bill also includes provisions related to the approval of the Keystone Pipeline. With rising gas prices and uncertainty in the Middle East, it is vital that we complete construction of this crucial pipeline in order to help secure our nation's energy resources. If we don't do this, Mr. Speaker, all we'll be doing is helping foreign energy producers. I had originally hoped that the House would be able to move H.R. 7, the 5-year surface transportation reauthorization bill that was passed by our committee in February. Unfortunately, we were not able to bring H.R. 7 to the House floor at this time. Instead, we will use this bill as a vehicle to conference with the Senate-passed surface transportation reauthorization bill. There were 3 amendments that were made in order by the Rules Committee, and I would like to express my support for all 3. Mr. Boustany's amendment would require that we spend the revenue we are collecting for the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund on Army Corps of Engineers projects, as opposed to using this revenue to offset spending elsewhere in the federal budget. This is a common-sense solution to help upgrade our nation's ports and maintain our global economic competitiveness. Just this morning, we held a hearing on the importance to our entire economy of our inland waterway system, and Mr. Boustany's amendment will certainly help in that regard. Mr. Ribble's amendment is based on the environmental streamlining provisions that were included in H.R. 7. This amendment would eliminate duplication by providing a single system to review decisions. It reduces bureaucratic delay by requiring concurrent instead of consecutive project reviews and setting deadlines for the completion of environmental reviews. These changes could cut the delivery process in half and could save taxpayers many, many billions over the next several years. The last 2 studies by the Federal Highway Administration said the average highway project takes 13 years. One study said 15 years, another study, and that is far too long. Other developed nations are doing these projects in half the time or less than we are. Mr. McKinley's amendment includes the text of H.R. 2273, the Coal Residuals Reuse and Management Act. This amendment would prohibit the United States Environmental Protection Agency from driving coal-powered plants out of existence and doubling or tripling our utility bills. The U.S. has been called the Saudi Arabia of coal, Mr. Speaker. If we do not use our coal in a clean and safe way, we will hurt millions of poor, lower-income, and working people all across this nation. I salute Chairman Mica for his hard work on this bill for the last several months, and I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 4348 and the subsequent amendments. And I yield back to Chairman Mica the rest of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Honored to yield 4 minutes at this time to the distinguished ranking member from the state of Oregon, the ranking member on our Transit and Highways Subcommittee, Mr. DeFazio.
Gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Well, it appears that the House has finally found the path out of Dysfunction Junction. We've been there for too long. We need a long-term, as long-term as possible, transportation bill as soon as possible. Now, this extension's for 180 days. We can't wait 180 days to come to agreement with the Senate. We need to go to an expedited conference as soon as possible. We've been gathering data from the individual states since the last 90-day extension 3 weeks ago. The state of North Carolina has canceled $1.2 billion worth of projects, 40,000 jobs this year. Other states are reporting in, none quite so drastic, but the grand total is going to be probably close to 100,000 jobs foregone because of the uncertainty created by these 90-day extensions. It's time to put an end to 90-day extensions. This should be the last one, and we should proceed immediately to conference and begin to work through our differences with the Senate. Even H.R. 7, which the Republicans couldn't get out of their own conference, they could not get agreement between those 50 or 60 who believe their national transportation policy should be set individually by the 50 states. Wow, what does that mean? Or, you know, transit should be thrown under the bus or out of the bus, with other members of their caucus saying, wait a minute, that's totally unacceptable to us. They couldn't get the bill out, but even the fact that they couldn't get the bill out, there's much overlap and agreement between many provisions in H.R. 7 and what the Senate has done. I believe we could conference those areas in disagreement quite promptly. As the ranking member said, this no longer ends safe routes to school, something which I opposed in H.R. 7, and other cycling and alternate modes of transportation. It doesn't throw transit out the window off the bridge, but transit would be in play between the House and the Senate. During the last major authorization, Safety Lou, we had an incredible fight in conference. But it wasn't between Democrats and Republicans. It was between the House and the Senate. And we fought for a number of weeks over the split between transit and highways and came to a good accommodation, I believe. And hopefully we'll end up close to that in this. But the Senate bill, which we tried to force a vote on, and had we put that in place 3 weeks ago, instead of the 90-day extension, we wouldn't have lost or been in the process of losing all those contracts and jobs now at the beginning of the construction season. That's about 100,000 jobs potentially lost with more temporary extensions. But we would instead have seen another 500,000 jobs, which is the predicted result of the stability of 2 years of funding with the Senate bill. So, you know, I will support this iteration because I am anxious to get to conference. I'm anxious to get agreement. I believe we should get it done before the middle of May so that states can capture this construction season and we can put a few 100,000 people who desperately want jobs back to work and those who supply them back to work. And finally, on the issue of excessive fuel prices, I wish there's only one thing we can do immediately. I mean, the XL pipeline, first off, they say they're going to export it after they refine it. We are exporting gasoline from the United States of America today. Where price is being set in a world market, and it's being set by speculators on Wall Street. If we just clamp down on the speculation on Wall Street, the head of ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs, the St. Louis Federal Reserve, and prominent economists say we could save consumers 60 to 70 cents a gallon tomorrow if we stopped the rip-offs by the people on Wall Street and the excessive speculation by the people on Wall Street, something that's only been allowed for about a decade. It didn't used to be allowed for them to control our energy future. So if you want to do something real, that should be part of this bill. XL Pipeline is going to do nothing to help people get lower gas prices.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, this is a highway and infrastructure bill. That means it is a jobs bill. And I'll remind my colleagues and those watching that the President said back in January as part of his weekly address that he would do whatever it takes to create jobs. There is not a more shovel-ready project than the Keystone XL pipeline, period. Secretary Clinton said in October of 2010, I am inclined to support this project. In August of 2011, she indicated that there was no reason why they couldn't give an approval or denial by the end of last year. This is 20,000 direct jobs, more than 100,000 indirect jobs, a $7 billion privately funded pipeline that will subscribe to the pipeline safety bill that this committee, as well as the Energy and Commerce Committee, worked on, that the President signed this last year, raising the standards, raising the fines for those that violate those standards. It is a better pipeline safety route than ever before. And I have to say that for those detractors, the route's been changed through Nebraska. It will no longer go through that aquifer. We will bring as much as 800,000 barrels of oil from the oil sands in Canada. As these gas prices continue to go up, Americans understand supply and demand. 800,000 barrels a day that we can get from our friends the Canadians. And if we don't do so, where is it going to go? China. China is already preparing to spend billions of dollars to instead build that pipeline to Vancouver, send it to China to be refined, and guess what? We will get none of the oil, none of that refined oil back. Some detractors of this project say, well, why don't we just build a refinery in North Dakota? Well, let's say we did. Are you not going to still then build a pipeline to connect it with the supply routes across the country? Can I,
It's expired.
Mr. Chairman, can I have 30 seconds more?
I'll yield the gentleman 30 seconds.
Gentleman recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, we haven't built a new refinery since 1976. EPA will not allow new refineries to be built. We have spent instead billions of dollars, billions, to expand the refineries that we have. Under regular order, we moved this Keystone Pipeline last summer. It passed on the House floor 2-1. There is no reason why a construction project like this shouldn't be in this bill. I look forward to the passage of this bill later this afternoon with the inclusion of the Keystone XL pipeline, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished lady from Florida, the ranking member on our subcommittee on railroads, Ms. Corrine Brown.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you,
3 minutes.
Chairman Micah and Mr. Ray Hall. And I will vote for this 18-month extension. But I've got to tell you, the Republican leadership has turned the House floor into a Frankenstein laboratory. Instead of bringing up a transportation bill that could get the support from both sides, they brought a bill to the floor that couldn't get support from either side. Now, after they couldn't convince the Tea Party members that transportation is actually very important to our economy, they're taking parts from different bills and creating the monster that they call transportation. It's a very sad time for transportation in the House of Representatives. The Republican leadership have ruined a process that used to be bipartisan, from a committee that used to be bipartisan. This is not the way to run the U.S. House of Representatives, and it is clearly not the way the American people wanted it to be run. I've been on Transportation Committee for 20 years, and it has always been partisan. Never been partisan. We were the committee that moved people, goods, and services and put millions of people to work. Now we gut funding, abandon core programs like transit and hazmat safety, and argue about issues that's not even germane to transportation. The Republican leadership have had a war on our Transportation Committee from the very beginning. First, they removed the firewalls from the trust fund and would not, no doubt, be raiding it if we had any money in it. Then they cut the size of our committee in half. Then they gave us all freshman members who don't know how to say anything but no, 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 no. And then for 2 straight years, they've gutted transportation funding in the Ryan's budget. You know, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. President Barack Obama said recently that Republicans used to like to build roads. All of our stakeholders support a comprehensive transportation bill, and I am hoping that we can pass, I hate to say it, the Senate bill. We used to do the work, but I hope we can pass the Senate bill. And I really want to say thank God for the United States Senate, because finally we have some people that are putting together a transportation bill that really will put the American people to work. I yield back the balance of my time. I'm sorry, I yield my time to Mr. Rahal. I yield my time to Mr. Rahal.
Yes, ma'am. Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to yield a minute and a half to the distinguished gentleman from Nebraska, who's the leader and one of the authors of the keystone provisions of this legislation. Mr. Terry.
The gentleman from Nebraska is recognized for 90 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And certainly the President of the United States knows how to say no. He says no to the Keystone Pipeline, turning down its application just 3 months ago. This gives the United States access to probably the largest known reserve oil sitting there in a pool in North America, but the President won't allow us to have access to it. But yet, during this administration, gas prices at the pump have gone up 120%. People in my district keep asking me, what's the energy policy? I have to tell them I don't know. He kills a pipeline giving us access to oil, which would increase supply in the United States, but yet sends billions of dollars to Solyndra and solar panel companies to further flood the market with more solar panels. So I don't know what the plan is to lower gas prices because he's not giving us access. Now, let's look at this $7 billion privately funded, oh, that's right, maybe that's the problem, it's privately funded, infrastructure project to bring us more gasoline. It's denied. $7 billion project to bring it 20,000 new jobs. The President says he'll do anything to create new jobs, but kills a pipeline that would get union workers off the benches and into the fields working. He kills those. Now, it creates 20,000 jobs. I only need 15.
I yield the gentleman an additional 15 seconds.
And gentleman's recognized for 15
the 20,000 direct
seconds.
jobs, there's millions of jobs if we just used our own resources. Do you know that we can be completely energy secure using our own resources? But this administration lacks the will to be able to do that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from West Virginia.
May I have a time check, please, Mr. Chairman?
The gentleman from West Virginia has 18 minutes remaining.
I'm sorry, how many? What did he say, 18?
I told him 18 for him. 15 and a quarter for the gentleman from Florida.
How much did I have left?
18.
I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from New York, a valued member of our Committee on T&I, Mr. Jerry Nadler.
Gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to H.R. 4348, the second surface transportation extension that we have considered this year. It has become eminently clear that the Republicans in the House cannot get consensus among themselves on a long-term transportation bill. They can't get consensus on a short-term transportation bill. They can barely pass this 90-day extension. And the only way to get it through is to yet again add the Keystone Pipeline and other anti-environmental measures. The Republican leadership keeps playing the same cards over and over, but nobody is playing this game anymore. The Senate has moved on. The Senate passed a bipartisan bill. We should do the same. The purpose of this extension is to serve as a vehicle to formally go to conference with the Senate, and I must confess that I might be inclined to vote for it on that basis. If it passes, the House position in conference will essentially be an extension of current law, putting the policy reforms in the Senate bill on a stronger footing. But I fear that this is really just a delaying tactic and a smokescreen. For a year and a half, the House Republicans have stubbornly refused to work with Democrats to develop a bipartisan bill, completely upending the historical traditions of our committee. This is despite the fact that there are plenty of individual Republican members who are willing to work with us on certain issues. When H.R. 7, the original Republican long-term reauthorization bill, was introduced, several Republican members joined me on an amendment to preserve the transit funding that would have been gutted in H.R. 7. That was probably one of the reasons that H.R. 7 was ultimately pulled before it could get to the floor. So there are clearly members on the other side of the aisle who would work with us to develop a bipartisan bill. But the Republican leadership stubbornly refuses to let that happen. Why should we expect anything different in conference? The Republican leadership could also just bring up the Senate bill, but they won't even allow a vote. Why? What are they afraid of? Because they know it would probably pass. And what would be wrong with that? The Senate bill isn't perfect, but it's a bipartisan compromise measure that will put people to work right away and provide more certainty to the transportation agencies than a stream of short-term extensions. We could resolve this situation right now, but they continue to block legislation that would likely pass both chambers on a bipartisan basis and be signed into law by the President. I hope that my concerns about the intent of the other side of the aisle turn out to be unwarranted. I hope that if this extension passes, it will ultimately move the process along in a positive manner, that we will have a meaningful conference that produces a good bipartisan bill. Passing an extension is certainly better than passing H.R. 7, but given what has transpired so far, and given the addition of the Keystone Pipeline and other environmental measures, I must reluctantly vote no. The Keystone Pipeline would cut through the United States to allow Canada to deliver up to 900,000 barrels per day of tar sand oil to Gulf Coast refineries. Tar sand oil extraction is destructive and dangerous. Producing 1 barrel of tar sand oil releases at least 3 times more global warming pollutants than conventional oil. If we allow this expansion to occur, it will be virtually impossible to reduce global warming. That's why the Keystone Pipeline has rightfully been called a game changer. And there is no guarantee that any of the oil extracted will be delivered to U.S. consumers. We cannot allow such a gigantic and irreversible step backward in the fight against global warming. But these objections are not the administration's. The administration simply wants to be able to complete the normal environmental review of the Keystone Pipeline provided by law to decide whether to approve it or not. But this legislation mandates approval regardless of and supersedes the normal process. This makes it impossible to vote for this legislation. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And at this time, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the distinguished representative, former chair of the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, Mr. Burton from Indiana.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman for yielding. A question. Does the President prevaricate? Does he mislead? I've been watching on television the last couple of days, and he says, you know, that we only have 2% of the oil reserves, and we've been doing more drilling over the past 3 years than we've ever done before. So let's look at the facts. And I hope somebody at the White House may be paying attention. According to the American Petroleum Institute, the number of new permits to drill issued by the Bureau of Land Management is down 40%. From an average of 6,444 permits in 2007 and 8 to 3,962 in 2009-10. The administration is stopping drilling on public lands. During the same period, the number of new wells drilled on federal lands have declined by 40%. And yet he keeps telling us the reason the gas prices are going up is for a number of other reasons. The fact is, we're not drilling here. We've got more oil in oil shale and public lands than they have in Saudi Arabia, and we're not exploring for it. President Obama cites that the oil production is at an all-time high during his administration. However, oil production on federal land fell by 11% last year. Oil production on private and state-owned land and beyond federal government scrip grew by 14%. So what he's talking about is where he can't touch it on private land, the drilling is up a little bit, but that's only a small portion of the oil that's available. Federal lands hold an estimated, get this, 116.4 billion barrels of recoverable oil, enough to produce gasoline for, get this, 65 million cars and fuel oil for 3.2 million households for 60 years. And yet the administration keeps saying, oh, we can't do it. We were doing everything we can. The American people need to know the truth. The truth is, if we used our own natural resources, in 5, 10, 15 years, we could be energy independent. But this administration wants to put more control in the federal administration.
It's expired.
And 15 additional seconds.
This
administration wants to put more and more control in the federal government, in health care, in energy, in every other area, because he believes in a European-style socialistic approach to government. And the American people need to know that. He isn't giving us the facts. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2.5 minutes to a distinguished member of our committee, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Steve Cohen.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chairman. Last week in Memphis, I met with dozens of transportation and business and civic officials involved in transportation. Every one of them said, stop the partisan politics and pass a transportation bill. Secretary Ray LaHood, a Republican who served 12 years in this House and 17 years as the Chief of Staff to Bob Michael, one of the great members of this group, came to Memphis. He said, pass the transportation bill. And he said the reason they don't want to do it is they don't want to give President Obama any jobs because they want to beat President Obama and the American people don't matter. That's the fact. The Secretary said this is the worst transportation bill he's ever seen, and he said it shouldn't be politicized. Transportation leaders across the country and our Republican Transportation Secretary are begging us to take up the Senate bill, get it passed, put Americans back to work, and improve our infrastructure. What's going on here is political. Gas prices are soaring, yes, but that's because of trouble in the Middle East. That's because of oil speculators. It's not because of the Keystone XL pipeline. That is hooey. Domestic oil prices are set by the international market, and more emerging economies are wanting and needing oil. That causes the price to go up. This assertion, the assertion that that gas will go down because the pipeline is false. In fact, if the pipeline is completed, gas prices will go up in this country. And TransCanada said that in their papers when they tried to get the pipeline approved. This will not mean more energy security. It will simply mean more money for international oil companies whose purpose is to raise money for themselves. And they're going to ship that oil overseas. It's not for American consumption. Yeah, they're not Middle Eastern. Yeah, they're not Venezuelan. But they're making profit, and they're going to send that oil overseas. It won't help America at all. And then they threw in something about coal ash. Coal ash rules that the EPA had that would prevent a disaster like happened in Tennessee. Has nothing to do with transportation. Put America back to work. Pass the Senate bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time has expired. Committee's not in order. Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself a minute and a half.
Gentleman's recognized for a minute and a half.
Let me just say, I heard repeated here some things about what the Secretary said, and he did not have favorable comments about H.R. 7. So we've tried to bring something forward that would bring us to passing a bill and getting people to work and getting this resolved. And then today, the Secretary said that the Congress would not pass a multi-year bill instead of saying he'd work with us and be the leader to do that. Then the Secretary went on to say, and he said, look what they've loaded it up with speaking about this bill today. Keystone, coal ash, none of it has anything to do with transportation. Well, first of all, the Secretary should, I guess it's difficult for him to understand that energy costs and the pain at the pump are killing the consumer and impacting dramatically the American people. Keystone does have something to do with that. I guess if you have a chauffeur pick you up in the morning and you're not pumping the gas yourself and taking the money out of your pocket, you wouldn't understand the relevance of Keystone. And then coal ash, which was just referred to here by the gentleman, it makes our surface more durable and we save money.
10 seconds.
I will not yield, and I don't like being interrupted, especially when I have a good point.
The rare time.
Coal ash, to continue, although being interrupted, makes the surface more durable, and it's important that we get value when we're putting money into roads and pavement. So it's a very important provision and saves costs and gets us more for our money.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 3 minutes to distinguished ranking member of the House Natural Resources Committee, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
The gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. You know, this bill is an environmental atrocity. The majority has allowed an unrelated amendment that would forbid the EPA, forbid them from requiring the safe disposal of toxic coal waste that contains arsenic, mercury, and chromium. And the majority has allowed an amendment that would provide massive exemptions from the National Environmental Policy Act and smothers the ability of communities to have input into projects that could create toxic nightmares in local neighborhoods. This is what the Republicans are doing out here today. I mean, EPA, every polluter's ally, that's what they want to turn it into. And so what we have on top of that is a provision to build the Keystone Pipeline through the United States of America from Canada, the dirtiest oil, by the way, in the world, bring it through the United States, and then to bring it to Port Arthur, Texas. Now, what goes on in Port Arthur, Texas? Very interesting. And I think it's important for the American people to know what happens there. Last year, 73% of all of the gasoline that was refined in Port Arthur and in the Houston area was exported out of the United States. Understand what I'm saying? This is oil that was found in the United States, drilled in the United States, sent down to Texas, refined down there in the Houston and Port Arthur area, and then they exported it. And where did they export it to? Our oil, United States oil. They exported it to China, to the communists. The Republicans are here blocking an amendment that makes it possible for us to stop the oil from the Keystone Pipeline from being sent to the communist Chinese. Now, I hear gentlemen out here charging President Obama with being a socialist, but who would engage in this kind of activity? To pretend that they want to have oil for the United States and for our citizens, and then when I ask for an amendment to ensure that all the oil that comes through the Keystone Pipeline stays in the United States, the Republicans say, oh no, you're not making that amendment. We're going to tie your hands, Mr. Markey. You can't make the amendment. We don't want you to make us be prohibited from selling this oil to the communist Chinese. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's just wrong. That's wrong. That oil is American oil. That oil should stay in the United States. If we're building this pipeline, it should stay here in the United States. We should not be exporting American oil with gasoline prices at $4 a gallon to China and to Latin America. And that's what this whole plot is about, by the way. This is a plot to build a pipeline down to Port Arthur, Texas, tax-free, and then export that oil out of the United States. That's why the amendment I requested has not been put in order.
What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Griffin.
Gentleman is recognized for 90 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of the Keystone XL pipeline as well as the underlying bill. The plot here is for jobs, American jobs. It's a no-brainer. Like most Arkansans, I support this pro-jobs project that will strengthen our national security by making us less dependent on Middle Eastern oil. Arkansas families and businesses are hurting due to high gas prices, and the Keystone Pipeline will bring an additional 1 million barrels of oil per day into the United States. More supply means lower prices, and Arkansans as well as all Americans need relief from these high gas prices. President Obama denied construction of the Keystone XL pipeline despite years of extensive vetting for environmental impacts. Make no mistake, the President's decision to reject the Keystone Pipeline has cost American jobs. Wellspun, a manufacturer in my district, has manufactured nearly half of the pipe for the Keystone Pipeline and was forced to lay off 60 workers after the President rejected the pipeline, after he delayed it last year. The Keystone Pipeline will strengthen American energy security and create tens of thousands of good American jobs. It's past time to move the Keystone Pipeline forward. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from West Virginia.
A time check, please, Mr. Chairman.
Both sides have 10 minutes remaining.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Florida.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from West Virginia.
I would ask my chairman, I'm ready to conclude. Is he ready to conclude? I know you have the right to conclude.
Well,
right?
I do have the right to conclude. I was expecting one additional speaker.
Same here.
And I will yield myself 1 minute at this time then.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, I know there's a lot of disappointment on the other side of the aisle because this extension and this ability to get the bill done contains no earmarks, no tax increases, and no programs of bigger government. So I know they're disappointed in that regard. And the other thing, too, that folks should remember is we've done everything we can in a bipartisan to move this process forward. I remember working with Mr. Oberstar, the former chairman, when the current secretary and the president came in and said they weren't going to do a 6-year bill when they had all the votes, huge majorities, and they could have put people to work and got this done. Instead, they gave us 6 extensions. So here we are trying to get the job done. As the cable guy says, and my son reminds me, Dad, we're going to get her done, and we're going to get her done one way or the other. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself the remainder of my time, actually. We're going to have time during the amendment process to debate the 3 amendments that have been made in order under the rule. And I wish more had been made in order. That's why I voted against the rule. But that decision was the Rules Committee. The 3 that will be allowed, of course, one has to do with environmental streamlining. The other has to do with the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. And then the third has to do with the legislation introduced by my colleague from West Virginia, Mr. McKinley, dealing with coal waste ash. The latter of which there's support from my side of the aisle for, and indeed for myself. The Harbor Maintenance Fund is a good amendment. I'm glad the Rules Committee made that in order, and find myself in position to support that, as well as the coal ash amendment at the proper time. I'll speak further on it. But I would like to say that the gentleman from Florida, my chairman, has referred to the inability of our side of the aisle to pass legislation when we were in control of this body. We may have been in control of the other body as well, although we were not, because the minority over there, as the gentleman knows, has the more power than the majority in the other body. And perhaps we did not have the full support of the administration as we would have liked under then-Chairman Jim Oberstar's leadership. And that's unfortunate as well. I don't think any of us will deny that on this side of the aisle. But the fact of the matter is today, with the other body being even more divided than it was in previous leadership regimes, they have passed a bipartisan bill. Half of the Republican members of their other body supported their bipartisan transportation bill. Both the chair lady and the ranking member of the relevant committee joined together, put their names on a piece of legislation, put some reforms in it that are good reforms, provided a 2-year bill, paid for, and I believe is a bill that we should have been considering today, and that I had made the request to the Rules Committee yesterday to consider, but they did not grant my wishes. So we are where we are today. We have an additional 90-day extension that we will be asked to vote on later today, and that's a good thing, I guess, if we get to a conference. And this is the final point that I want to make, is that conference must be held sooner rather than later. It must be held as soon as possible. We're ready to go to conference later today. If the conferees were to be announced, and we already have the Senate bill, so from our side of the aisle, we're ready to go to conference today, right now. And I would urge the majority in this body to call that conference as soon as possible. Our workers cannot wait any longer. Our small businesses cannot wait any longer. Our road contractors cannot wait any longer. This is the time of the year when road contracts are let, as I'm sure my distinguished chairman and every member of this body knows full well. This is the time of the year, the springtime of the year, when those decisions have to be made, when our small businesses, when our road contractors need to let their employees and prospective employees know today. They need to let them know whether or not they're going to have a job, not 90 days from now, not 90 plus 90 days from now, but today. And so that's why I would urge that this conference committee meet as quickly as possible, call upon the leadership of this body to call a conference committee. Our workers are ready. Our contractors are ready. Contracts are ready to be let. We need those American jobs now, and I would hope that Chairman Mica would join me in a bipartisan plea to assign conferees as expeditiously as possible and to call a conference even quicker if that's possible. I yield back the balance of my I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida.
Thank you. I'm pleased to yield to one of the leaders for responsible government. Gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the chairman for yielding. I rise in support of the provision in this legislation to get construction of the Keystone Pipeline underway. For months, members on both sides of the aisle have worked to impress upon the administration the urgent need for the Keystone XL pipeline project to proceed. Justification for Keystone as a safe and critical boon to private sector job creation and American energy security has not changed. This project, as we all know, carries with it thousands of jobs. It will still increase the nation's capacity to transport crude oil by 830,000 barrels a day, and the State Department is still on record saying that the Keystone, quote, poses little environmental risk and will lead to, quote, no significant impacts to most resources. But unfortunately, the administration's reluctance to proceed with Keystone has left some that question things on Keystone and some debate to begin. The unemployment rate is still above 8%. The U.S. still relies on the same sources of energy, of foreign energy, and a lot of Americans are asking why. Why in the world, why can't we get this approved? I would urge adoption of this provision. This provision is good. I thank the gentleman. I have concerns overall on the transportation provisions, but this provision is very good. The Keystone provision, and it should remain in. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from West Virginia.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield 2 minutes to one of the leaders of the Energy and Commerce Committee and help her on this legislation. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the gentleman from Florida for yielding and for bringing this legislation forward, and specifically want to talk about Title III of this bill, and that deals with the Restore Act. And, of course, this Friday will mark the 2-year anniversary of the Deepwater Horizon disaster. And people all across the country saw for weeks and weeks oil coming into the Gulf of Mexico, destroying ecosystems, destroying economic industries, and yet still to this day there is no mechanism in place to dictate what should happen to those fines that BP and the other responsible parties will have to pay under the Clean Water Act. And this component, the Restore Act, actually sets that policy out. And it was the result of a compilation of work by Republicans and Democrats from all 5 Gulf Coast states who came together and recognized that the most responsible thing to do would be to dedicate that money, 80% of those fines, to the Gulf Coast states so that we actually have revenue to go and restore the damage that's been done. I think most people recognize the right thing to do is to dedicate that money, not to send it up to Washington to be spent on things unrelated, but to actually allow us to restore the damage that was done in the Gulf of Mexico from that tragedy. And that's what this bill does. The mechanism is in place, and as we go to a conference committee, I feel very confident we can get to a point where we have the full Restore Act in the final product so that there is no question that there is a commitment from this Congress that the Gulf Coast states ought to have the ability to restore the damage that was done during that tragedy. Of course, another component of this bill is the Keystone Pipeline. And I think as we look at the dilemma so many families are facing with escalating gas prices, the fact that you've got gas prices in some places already over $4 a gallon, experts predicting $5 a gallon gasoline. And here we have a friend in Canada saying that they want to send 1 million barrels a day of oil to America, which is 1 million barrels a day we don't have to get from these Middle Eastern countries who don't like us, sending billions of dollars to people, in essence funding the enemy in some of these terrorist battles across the Middle East. And we've got the ability to create 20,000 jobs and secure our energy security. I look forward to passage of this legislation. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from West Virginia.
Is the gentleman from Florida ready to close?
I'm ready to close.
Okay, let me I know how much time I have left, I think, but tell me, Mr. Chairman.
5.5 minutes.
Okay. Let me, wait a minute. Let me again repeat what I said a moment ago. I'm sure the chairman heard me, and I'm asking once again that we go to conference as quickly as possible. I gave the reasons in my concluding speech why that is necessary for the sake of jobs for Americans, and I would hope that in one last-ditch effort to plead for bipartisanship in this body, as the other body has already demonstrated and proved, that perhaps the chairman would join me, his ranking member, in a letter to the Speaker urging that we go to conference as quickly as possible. I've been explained, the legislative process has been explained to me, and when you cut through it all, we could go to conference as early as tonight on this legislation. So I would ask the chairman once again if he would join me in that last bipartisan plea I make for such a joint pleading with the Speaker to go to conference. I yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
Gentleman for yielding, and I would yield to the chairman of the committee in the hope that he would respond to that, because I think it's a reasonable request.
And I would tell the gentleman, am I on the gentleman's time, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you're on the gentleman's time.
Then I would tell the gentleman that I plan to respond in not taking his time, but in taking my time to the request from the distinguished ranking member from West Virginia, Mr. Rahal, and I will have an answer in response to his specific question, feeling whether or not I would sign the letter asking for an expeditious approval and consideration of appointment of conferees and going to conferees in an expedited manner.
Reclaiming my time, I'm afraid I didn't quite catch that, but if the gentleman is saying that he wants to originate the letter making those points, I will tell him right now I would sign it, and I believe the gentleman from West Virginia would sign it. If that's the problem, that he was insinuating that we in the minority would initiate the letter, the point is we would love to have the chairman write the letter and be willing to sign it. My understanding of the procedures that have been set forth already in the Senate is when we send this bill to the Senate, and it could be there within a couple hours, that Leader McConnell and Reid must sit down and agree that it meets their preconditions to go to conference. If it does, then the Senate goes automatically to conference. They don't have to go through all their usual procedures. And then they would send the request for conference back to us, which could be here tonight or early tomorrow morning, and we could appoint conferees tomorrow, and we could begin negotiating the bill. I'm willing to clear my weekend schedule. I have things scheduled. I'm willing to clear my weekend schedule. I hope to be a conferee on our side of the aisle to go to conference, because we really need to get the certainty the states need. Every day, states are announcing delays and cancellation of projects for this construction season, which for those of us who live in the northern part of the country, not down in Florida, means they don't get done this year. If they can't commit to a project by the end of May, except for some very minor projects, it won't get done this year. We need those jobs. We need those projects. Instead of adding jobs and projects today, because of the temporary nature of these two extensions, states are notifying DOT that they are going to delay or cancel projects. And again, in the case of North Carolina, $1.2 billion worth of projects, 41,000 jobs lost. In my state, a couple of thousand jobs lost, and we have high unemployment. All across the country, it probably adds up to 100,000 jobs that will be foregone this construction season if we don't get a longer-term bill done by mid to late May. I think it's entirely possible, and as I said, on this side of the aisle, you know, we want to expedite going to conference. That's the reason we will support this bill despite some of its faults, because the majority has shown a willingness to sit down seriously and get this done, but we can't delay. We have to move forward with all dispatch. Let's start tomorrow. Let's work through the weekend. Let's work through the next break. We've already had 10 or 12 or 15 breaks this year. Let's work through the next break. I'll cancel my schedule for that break, too, and get this bill done for the American people, for our transportation system by mid-May. With that, I would yield back my time to the gentleman.
Gentleman,
as we are all anxiously awaiting the chairman to respond on his time, I will yield back my time so that we all can wait with bated breath to hear the distinguished chairman's response to our invitation.
gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida.
Answering with bated breath, I yield myself the balance of my time. And might I inquire as to what time is remaining?
5 3/4 minutes.
Thank you, and I yield myself that time, and I will conclude. First of all, let me say on a serious basis that I've tried to have the best working relationship possible with Mr. Rahal, the Democrat leader of the Transportation Committee. He and I were respectively chosen to lead the committee, and I've tried to do my best in the last year plus several months to work with him in meeting our responsibilities. And we have done some important things. We passed a 5-year stalled FAA bill, and we did it without tax increases, without earmarks, and with a good plan for the future that will put people to work in an area, the aviation industry, that accounts for 10% of our economic activity in the country. Let me say, in regard to the chair, former chair of the Highway Subcommittee, I believe Mr. DeFazio, and he was the ranking member at 9/11 when the good Lord put us both with the responsibility of trying to get the nation's aviation system going after the horrendous attack by terrorists on our country and on the aviation system, and we did that together. You know, I came into this position after 18 years. My predecessor, Mr. Oberstar, who I enjoyed so much working with, a distinguished leader from the other side, learned quite a bit from Mr. Oberstar and others. Mr. Schuster came before me, a whole host of great leaders in the committee, Mr. Mineta, my first chair, and I tried to learn from all of them and not make mistakes and do the best thing for the committee and for the not for my self-interest or my party's interest, but in the interest of the American people, because that's what we're sent here for, is to help the American people. We had a crisis after 9/11. We came together. We have a crisis now. We have millions of Americans who don't have jobs, who don't have work. I supported the bill. Mr. Oberstar waited 32 years to become chairman. I was elected after 18 years by my colleagues. He had his bill pretty much together. I didn't have a bill. So I first went to Mr. Rahal's district. The ranking member held the first hearing on this legislation in Beckley, West Virginia, which I'd never been to, and I wouldn't mind going back, and everybody there was nice to me, and committed then. Went across the country, did a record number of hearings, as I said, bipartisan, bicameral, with Ms. Boxer, who I hope to complete this legislation, and with other leaders and workers, because here you can't do it yourself. You really can't. You might think you can, but you can't. And so I've taken everybody's good ideas. And please don't say that I wasn't bipartisan. We took every amendment, 100 Democrat amendments. I don't know anyone that's done that. We sat there till 3 o'clock in the morning. What was it, 16-hour markup, 13-hour markup, 18-hour? And we passed 20-some of their amendments. And it's true, this is difficult. I don't have earmarks like the previous chairman had. What was the bill? The last bill had 6,300 earmarks. Yeah, you could get the bill done quickly, but even then it took them 2 years. Now, I've been here for, 14 months leading the committee, and today we will go take this to conference. And to answer your question, not only will I sign the letter, I will draft the letter asking expeditious going to conference and appointment of conferees. In addition, I'll ask our chair, Mr. Duncan, to sign that letter, and I hope you'll join me, and I thank you for offering that so we can get the people's work done. You know, I look back and I see the missed opportunities. When Mr. LaHood came into Mr. Oberstar and I and turned down a 6-year bill that we had planned. I didn't like everything Mr. Oberstar proposed. In fact, I probably would have had to hold my nose and vote for it. But I told him, in the interest of the country and the American people, we needed to move forward, and I would support him getting the bill to conference and we could work out the details. I wasn't afforded all that opportunity in this process, and I'm saddened a bit about that because I have tried to work in good faith. But now the American people are calling on us. Stop the bickering, stop the baloney, get people to work. The American people are hurting. And then again, the pain at the pump. You know, I've seen people, when I've been home, taking out a few dollars at a time trying to pay that gas bill. And you know, sometimes I've seen people buy $5 worth of gas, and that breaks my heart that they can barely make it back and forth. I saw a waitress telling me how difficult it was for her to get to work because she couldn't afford it. But that's why they sent us here, is to get this job done. And we need to get this job done. So I think on behalf of the American people, we need to continue the process. We've been down several roads, and some of those had some bumps, and some of them had some dead ends. But let's hope that this has a path to lower energy costs. This has a path to building this country's infrastructure, which is so important for what the business of this country is. And the business of this country is business. It wasn't big government, so we can do it. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. All time for general debate has expired. Pursuant to the rule, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the